Yeah,
Council members.
got one council member, yeah. Good.
So you get to do whatever you want.
So, yeah, we'll just talk to you.
I'm the chief entertainment officer in the city of Bonney Lake.
That's funny. Right, well, we have one of our council members is going to be a few minutes late. And I haven't received information from another council member. So I don't know if we want to go ahead and start right now or give it a few minutes.
You don't have any people?
Yeah. Not yet.
I'll leave, that's okay.
I
I promised Steph I would show up for her.
Oh,
So
good. All right.
I said, come,
Yeah, we're just waiting on a council member.
at least one.
At
That
least
is
one.
not me.
Yeah.
I am not who you are looking for. These are not the droids you are looking for.
You've been off the droids I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I just have to finish up a couple of those narratives.
Okay,
I'm working on it frantically.
good.
Are you ready for them yet?
I am. Yeah, I got done with check clearing
Okay,
just like half an hour ago.
all right.
So that's tomorrow.
Well,
But
tomorrow morning I will get on the last. It's
Yeah.
just parks and
We
streets.
are on, we're being recorded, but,
if you can focus on,
Oh, listen, Councilmember Rock will be a few minutes late.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so.
getting that stuff for Chris.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna email him tomorrow morning, see if he's still available on Friday morning to talk with him
Okay.
to see,
It sounds like he said, you know, even if the assumption is using the old assumption, that he's fine with that. So,
well, I think it's getting all of us to understand what he, because I sent that map to Adam, who made that map, and he's like, I don't even know what this map says. It doesn't really make sense to me. But I think it was trying to do that case,
He's traveling.
implementing of that case decision
probably.
of collection versus lateral, but then that means we have to change some of our definitions long-term, so we're all using the same terminology.
yeah.
I think that's part of what's just causing.
He'll know more than I do. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just know that he says we can save a lot of money, so I'd like to do that.
I would love to save money.
Mayor grabbed me.
Council.
Yay.
I was trying to get away and he grabbed me. Like, no, come back.
No quorum.
Yeah.
We want to wait on
Great.
Councilmember Rock.
Well, we
or-
have two
Now we
now,
have-
and then she'll,
Yeah.
she'll be coming in momentarily, so as long as we have two, we're good. All
Sorry,
right, no, you're fine.
I did leave at 3:30.
Crazy.
I'm sure
We'll
you
go
did.
ahead and start the meeting.
So,
We're just
What's that?
waiting on
Wait.
one.
Yeah, I
So,
told him we can see it.
the minutes approval, did you see any changes to the minutes?
I did not.
Neither did I,
And
so we have approval. Okay. These are our discussion action items are AB 24-115 ordinance D 24-115, which is the sewer pretreatment regulations amendments by Jason Sullivan, interim public services director.
So, earlier this year, back in, I want to say June or July, the city council, adopted an ordinance, establishing the pretreatment regulations in our municipal code as required by our interlocal agreement with the city of Sumner and also, and Sumner's MPDS permit for the operation of the wastewater treatment facility. That amendment package of those code languages were submitted to Department of Ecology this summer, and they responded back with a number of comments that are now updated in this ordinance. While the ordinance is long, there's not a lot of what I would consider substantive ordinances. The biggest change and the biggest pages is the definition, and that's just because we had to put the entire definition section in there to insert definitions. So most of the changes were around definitions. Most of those definitions we were adopting by reference, but now are having to put them in the code. And so it's things like the definition of what an accredited lab is, what a composite sample was, an engineering report, notice of application and operation and maintenance manual, plan review authority, plans and specifications. Those are the terms that were basically added to the definition sections, which takes you all the way to page 15 of the ordinance itself. In the substantive standards, in section 1314.330, which starts on page 20 of your packet, all we actually did is delete the word draft and aluminum. There actually are no standards for aluminum in the wastewater. So that was deleted out of the code.
So we can put as much aluminum in water as we want.
That's what it's sounding like from a pre-treatment standard.
Right.
I don't think that that's true, but there's not.
Arco is
Yeah.
like rushing over here right now.
Yeah, there's not
That
a,
was arsenic.
yeah, that was arsenic, which is, yeah, arsenic and lead. Yeah, from the making of aluminum.
Right.
Right. There isn't a standard for pre-treatment for the concentration flow, what flows into the treatment facility for aluminum. So that was deleted. It was only listed as TBD in the draft regulation and the initial ones. And then from there on out, most of the other changes from page 21 of your packet through,
What was your read on 1314.650 on page 23? I had a question of somebody thought it was important to add terminate.
Yes.
Instead of revoke.
well, it says or revoke. That was the Department of Ecology. They wanted both terminate and the language terminate or revoke. For me, that seems like the same thing. If I revoke your pre-treatment permit, I'm also terminating your ability to connect to the sewer system. So,
Okay.
while I can see where terminate has stronger language, if I'm revoking it, it's terminated anyway. So that one always perplexed me why they wanted it in there. But since we can already revoke a wastewater discharge permit, what would be the difference in terminating your wastewater treatment permit? I mean, I couldn't.
Dead in the water.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a real big, from an operational standpoint, right? If I'm the customer, the end user, and the city is revoking my wastewater treatment connection permit, and they're terminating it, in both cases, I can't connect until I come back into compliance.
And are you the director or the director in the Sumner Sewer?
It's Sumner. So if you go back to the definition of,
Director?
let me. Yeah, that section didn't have it. So yeah, if you go back to the definition of director. I'm gonna find it. On page 10 of your packet. It's actually, it could be either. It says the Public Works Director of the Control Authority or designee of the director, including without limitation any designated officer, employee, or other representative of the contributing jurisdictions who has delegated certain duties and responsibilities by this chapter. So I think as we begin to implement this, identifying which duties are delegated to me
Yeah.
as a director and which delegators aren't delegated to me, I think is going to be important. The process by which, at least initially how we've been approaching this with Sumner is it's Sumner's wastewater treatment plant. So people connecting to the Sumner wastewater treatment plant, those decisions should be made by the treatment plant operator and not us as the city. But we can continue to have those discussions, but I think it's going to be important as we identify what tasks are delegated. And I think we'd probably be best to have an MOU to specifically lay out those.
Yeah, I would
Those
think it
things.
would be great that the way I read this definition is that they can have a director and that director can be in Sumner.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can have a deputy director that can try to face our citizens, right?
Mhm.
And then, would you be against that? Did
I
we
think, I
talk
think,
about that the next Jack?
yeah, I think it just would depend on what. Yeah, I think some of those duties should be the director of Bonney Lake, but I think some of those duties should also be,
Absolutely, yeah, this Sumner, because it's their sewer.
it's their sewer treatment plant.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things is as we stand up the pre-treatment program,
Mhm.
what duties are delegated, and I think it would be a great conversation for the Jack. What duties are delegated to the Bonney Lake director versus what duties will be handled by the Sumner director. And I think it's gonna be important to spell that in some sort of memorandum of understanding. So that when there's the disagreement that you know will happen, there's certainty about all the political parties have agreed who's doing what. I think that's more of my concern is if it's not clear and we make a call and then Sumner wants to make the counter call, but Sumner says, well, we haven't delegated that authority to you.
Right.
So therefore your call doesn't matter. I think that would be more damaging to Wine Lake residents than anything because there wouldn't be a clear distinction of duties.
Right.
But I do agree with you. That we do need to spell that out. And I think it'd be a great conversation for the Jack of how we stand up this pre-treatment program.
I don't want to give you more, because I know you've got plenty.
Well,
Yeah, I want to make sure the citizens have some reasonable representation.
yeah, that's, it's that fine line and that's what we're here to provide is that conduit for the citizens as well. So, but I think having a policy conversation at the council level about how that is specifically spelled out
Mhm.
is the way to go. Right, because at least then there's a policy agreement, policy framework of how much authority the Sumner, because it goes both ways. How much authority is the Sumner City Council willing to delegate that affects their treatment plant to an employee that doesn't work for the city? And contrary, how much authority is the city council wanting delegated to the city of Bonney Lake for a treatment plant that we don't own? Right, so there's somewhere in the middle of that is the right answer. You don't want to be all the city of Sumner. You don't want it to be all the city of Bonney Lake. So you'd have to lay on somewhere in the center. And I think the Jack is the appropriate place. And I'll get in touch with Ryan. Because I know the pre-treatment program, the nice thing is the pre-treatment program, even though the rules are in place and we have to have them adopted, it's going to be a slow rollout from what I understand, the way it's been explained to me at the Jacks, how we begin to implement these different phases of the program. And I think having that clear delegation is important.
You good with that?
Yep.
And then I would say the rest of the other amendments really are amending a lot of sections to change industrial survey screening form to non-domestic user screening form. That's like that was like 50, 60%, 70% of the amendments.
Yeah.
And I did try to make the ordinance as short as possible by only amending the subsection of the code and not including, like if you look at page 21, I didn't include all of 1318-430. I only included subsection A because only subsection A needed to be amended to make the page. It originally was like a 50-page ordinance. So I did all the creative things I could to follow code drafting standards. But so if it was only one subsection, I just pulled out that one subsection and amended it.
Thank you.
In the same, yeah. So just trying to keep it as short as possible.
I immediately looked for hot tub
Why hot tub?
because they had hot tubs, right? That they were like concerned about, like apartment complex draining their hot tub. I guess was the thought process by somebody at some point in time. I'm like, I don't think that's a problem in Bonney.
Fats, oils, and greases.
Did it?
I mean, oil.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's more the chlorine. It's the
Yeah,
chlorine.
well, that's probably, but how often is that gonna happen and are they gonna?
I think it was, from my understanding, it was something that had happened just recently with the Sumner Y, where they had a big drain of pool water, and that was a lot of chlorine that came rushing into their system. And so I think that, when those things happen, as a regulator, those are the things that rush to your brain every time. I was like, oh my God, chlorine from this.
Only we had a pool on that hill.
Maybe someday. So I think the next step is whether whether the committee wants this on consent or full council. As I mentioned, I don't think there's really substantive changes to the code. It's more housekeeping measures, fixing references, fixing, yeah, a couple definitions, adding definitions, but not really changing the regulations.
Mhm.
26.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, my thought is to put it on the consent agenda, so what does everybody else think? Yes,
It's fine.
okay. Put that on the consent agenda. And then our next discussion is AB 24-120 and ordinance R 24-120 or D. See, where does it say?
oh, it should be resolution. There's a typo in the
Is that in the
agenda bill.
the agenda bill? So, okay, so for today's agenda, we need to change, the ordinance needs to be an R or a D?
The word ordinance needs to be stricken and changed to resolution.
Okay. So that's on the agenda page.
Yeah, and it's on the AB. I'll fix
Okay.
that.
So that's on page 29. So that's a resolution then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Back. All right. So this is the resolution. So it will be, instead of ordinance, it will be AB 24-120 and resolution R 24-120.
Correct.
The resolution of the city of the city council of the city of Bonney Lake, Pierce County, Washington, authorizing the mayor to sign a contract with Townsend and Associates to provide on-call consulting services. And that is Jason Sullivan.
Yep.
You have to give us it.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'll give you a quick briefing. Back in September of 2022, the city council entered into a contract with Townsend and Associates to provide on-call consulting services specifically for building plan review and building inspection services, to provide coverage when the building staff was unavailable, either for training, vacation, and or, injury or sickness. We've been using Townsend for the last 2 years and for when we have peak times in permitting as well. So big group of permits come in. We don't have the capacity to review those permits in a timely manner. We farm them out to Townsend and Associates and pay for that plan review services through our consulting line budget item that's already in the city's budget. So there's not any funding amount tied to the contract itself. It's just we use our consulting line item that's provided every year in our budget for consulting services. It's worked really, really good when we've had inspectors out for either holidays or for vacations or because they've been sick or injured or for training. It's also helped. We had a lot of help this summer with them coming in and doing some commercial plan reviews for us. The other thing the contract provides is it allows us to have a structural engineer, access to a structural engineer. So in case we have a larger complex commercial building that we don't have structural engineers on staff, we have the access through our contract with Townsend. So really been a really good consultant. We've used them not a lot, but we have used them efficiently throughout the year to provide inspections. So we don't have to cancel inspections when we have the building inspectors out for training or one's on vacation and one calls in sick.
Excuse me, is Ken licensed? I thought he was,
Ken's license is a professional engineer, but not structural.
not structured, okay.
So we have both we have
a ME for
he's
HVAC and
no civil.
civil, okay.
Yeah, both Tully and Ken and Drew, who are three engineers on staff, have their license, but they're all civil engineers. And their PE is only in civil. So they understand what I'm learning from engineering school. They probably understand it all, but they don't have a stamped
they didn't pay to take the test.
Yes.
And for the test.
Yeah, to get the structural engineering stamp, they got their civil engineering stamp, so. Just there are some times where we need that additional help when you're talking about, because typically our building staff are reviewing that and they don't have stamps. And when you get into weird structural stuff in large scale commercial buildings, it's nice having access to a structural engineer in case there's questions or concerns. So you're not having the building staff having an argument with a structural engineer. You can have the structural engineer argue with the structural engineer. Haven't had to use it yet, but we like having that access to that just in case it happens. And so we're just asking that our current the contract be renewed for an additional 2-year period. There's no impact to the budget. There's no, as we're not spending any money, it's only on call as we need it. Based on the amount of money we have authorized in the budget, we couldn't go above that line item in the budget. So we'd have to maintain our spending authority within that consultant line item.
We shopped around, right?
We shopped around when we did Townsend, it took us about 3 or 4 months to find somebody. And Townsend was the best one that we could come up with. We didn't see the rates as being unreasonable what we're getting charged other consultants and other engineering staff.
How are their hourly rates compared to in-house staff?
Well, they're gonna be a little bit high. They are gonna be higher because, yeah, and you're paying travel time when we have to call them in for inspections. You're paying their fully loaded rate plus overhead in administration and profit because it's a consulting firm. Whereas for staff, you're just paying salaries and benefits. So it is gonna be a higher rate than what you would pay with your staff. The way we use these consultants is we would never want to staff. I try to explain it as the best I can explain it is permitting is like a roller coaster with peaks and valleys. And what you're trying to do for a staffing is find that midpoint between the peak and the valley for staffing levels. Because if you staff at the valley, you're going to be overwhelmed as soon as you have any sort of rise in permits. If you staff for the peak, you're going to be overstaffed and paying a lot of money. And so what do you do when your permits are between that peak and the valley outside of your staffing? That's where these consultants really come in to benefit. The other thing that we're wanting to have this contract is there was a change in state law this last session that if you don't meet certain permit deadlines, you would have to refund up to 20% of the permit fee. The state did provide out to local jurisdictions with you had to implement 3 of like 8 tasks, and then that provision wouldn't apply. One of those is having on-call consultant support. So we have them for land use, we have them for engineering, and we have them for building. So we're able to say we have on-call support, we have money in the budget. So when we have those peaks, we can rely on the consultants. So, and we did do a big RFP when we selected Townsend 2 years ago. And so we just want to continue to use Townsend at this time.
What we had in expenses for a year is nowhere near comparable to the salary.
No. I think we have spent maybe, I'm doing this from memory based on the task orders I've seen, maybe 15,000, maybe 20,000.
Okay.
So not even close to what another building inspector would. Yeah, I always watch that. Are our consultant fees getting to a point where if we had the staff inside going to make that a decision? I would bring that to Sherry. Sherry, we're spending $130,000 on this consultant to do this work. We could staff it for 80,000. How do you want to present that to the council and let them make the decision? Because it's not that the work goes away, it's just how you're paying for that work. And I think as I've been sitting in the director's chair, that's something that I have been looking at is what are we spending on consultants? And is it wise to continue to use consultants, or should we start talking about bringing those projects back in-house? Because while yes, you're adding staff and a cost. When I first got in, I think, John, 10, 15 years ago, consultants were significantly cheaper than what you could hire staff for. Over the last 5 or 6 years, the consultant rates have far outstripped what we're paying for staff. Even when you consider salaries and benefits, they are just, there's a competitive market out there for engineers and planning staff and building staff. And so they're getting a premium at their jobs and then they're tacking on profit on top of that. So you're paying, I think, $200-300 sometimes for a consultant.
Right.
Yeah,
I think $300 billable hours is what we pay.
yeah.
Right.
And so if once you get $300 billable hours, we're not paying anybody in the city $300 an hour, right? Even if you consider labor, fully loaded benefits. So
Yeah, I haven't seen that rate on any of our contracts, but yeah, I was pretty surprised.
So I'm monitoring that, and you might see me coming forward next year with proposals to say, should we move this thing inside or out? Knowing we have budget crisis, but it would be a delta in the budget.
Okay.
And we are for planning doing an RFP right now because we weren't happy with our request for proposals. We weren't happy with the planning consultant group that we had, so we are doing a whole new request for proposal that will be going out next week or two, and that contract will be coming forward in January.
Is there an appropriate time? When would an appropriate time to be to show kind of like a summary of what we spent on consultants? Is that like before the budget or during the
Off
budget?
memory, I think Jason's total consultant line is about 100,000, so it's not even an employee.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right? It's 100,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, this year it was a little bit more because of the consultant.
Right,
the
because
comp
of- yeah.
plan and stuff like that, but typically it's 100. I think next year that we reduced it to
Yeah,
80.
something like that.
80,000. It's more on the engineering side. That's where I'm really seeing.
Yeah, like I've seen parametrics,
Yeah.
all those things. We spend a lot of money.
Yeah, like construction management. We spend, I think on one or two projects, we probably spend enough for an employee. Right, so it's the question of, I kind of digress and I apologize, but it's whether or not you want to start pulling. We used to have 2 or 3 in-house construction managers. And the decision was to let consultants do that work, and we're paying significantly higher rates for outside construction management versus having that staff
Yeah.
in-house.
And I think that was kind of, locally, everyone kind of started to do that. I know with the last city I worked, we ended up getting sued over a project. So people kind of started going, you know what, let's use the consultants so that way we're not the ones on the hook when you have these employees and these construction projects gone awry. So
So
there's
there's-
that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a risk to it as well, but I think it's something I definitely think we should look at because we are spending. I was shocked at how much sometimes I see the construction management contracts come through at. So I'd say it's really not in the planning world, building world that you're seeing kind of the contracting getting up to where you're talking it's equivalent people. I think on the engineering side, the water, the sewer, stormwater side, I definitely see that there's a conversation that needs to be had. Whether we change anything, that's a policy decision, but I think there's at least a conversation that I was gonna have with the council in January, once we started figuring out kind of what our year-end totals look like.
So are we thinking to put this on the consent agenda since, it's staff recommended? Mr. McClymont?
It's included in the budget already.
Pardon?
It's included in the budget already too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead
What'd
and
you
put
say?
that on the consent.
I'm good with.
Yeah. And that is all that we have for our discussion items. So now we have open committee discussion.
You guys have easy meetings.
You wanna?
No, I'm hearing little
There's not
steps.
always this.
She wanted to go home and I said, I'll attend for you.
Okay,
So, yeah.
yes,
So I did have something.
yes.
What's happening with the Historical Society?
We're actively working on a lease. They've moved into the Public Works modular
Okay.
and we're actively working on a lease with them. I believe they're still, I'm looking at the mayor, I think the last update I had from Leslie, they were still looking for insurance.
That's the last update I recall.
Insurance for the current.
They're going to Public Works modular, so I don't know if you've been up the old
Okay.
Public Works site. We had a triple wide mobile home up there.
Yeah, I've been.
Okay, yeah, so they had
Yeah.
relocated out of old City Hall into that building, and so we're working on a lease agreement that would come before council after the first of the year.
Okay, so they aren't, nobody's gonna go in there, they don't have anything.
Oh, they moved everything in there, but no, they're not meeting in there.
We went ahead and moved them up there so that we
Yeah.
could keep the demolition of the old city hall.
So it's really just a storage area now.
Right now, yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't
It's,
heard about
it's been a
that.
SWAT training area as well.
Yes. The
old city hall.
I grabbed some stuff out of there and there's like rounds everywhere.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah.
the SWAT team has been using because we're doing a demo, they've been breaching doors and shooting rounds in there and. Not
Next
gonna
week, the
change.
fire department's coming and they're setting a fire.
Hey, that would help us with the demo cost, because it would just be clean up the ashes. But yeah, so we moved them up there, so we could clear way for that demolition project. The contract for that should be coming to council here. I think December 3rd, it'll be coming to
They
CDC.
pay to lease that space for them?
That, I don't know what I'm working on. I haven't been working on the lease.
Yeah,
Is
Leslie's
that
been,
the plan? They're supposed to lease the space?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
at a highly discounted rate.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
imagine. I don't think they.
And then we've talked about
Yeah,
things like,
so.
the public benefit that we would receive by giving them a discounted rate, like doing rotating historical displays in the lobby here at the
Yeah.
Justice Center and the Public Services Center. Having a minimum amount of hours that they're open as their resource center, open to the public. Be a avenue for doing research for us if we had some historical matter that we wanted them to do some research. So there's public benefit, for giving them a reduced release rate.
We're trying to work with this place.
Do we know when they're gonna be
Yeah.
ready to move in and?
I looked north, I'll leave, I could not find any place to sit.
After the first, it would be after but they couldn't open until after we had a
Yeah.
lease.
Okay.
So it would be after the first day.
Okay, so then be like brand new building, brand new year, come see the,
We did the carpet, they did
Yeah.
the painting, things like that.
And we've got them all, it's gonna be all fenced off, so they'll have their own area that's theirs, and they won't be able to access into the kind of a park maintenance yard that we have over there.
any other questions? Any other discussion?
You all look lovely tonight.
Thank you.
You got me for another 30 minutes before I disappear and turn into a pumpkin.
All right, I guess we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting then.
So the weird thing, John, is sitting in here and watching you on the
Yeah.
screen, your words don't match your lips
Oh.
there.
So
It's
it's a
like,
good thing
this is
he's
really
not,
weird.
it's a good thing he's not
That's-
looking, because do you ever go to the science museum? Yeah.
This is what I've been after. How it makes my life,
I can never.
it makes my life so much simpler. I'm just like, oh
I
yeah.
don't know what it is.
Headsets on and you can hear yourself talking.
Yeah,
So you're talking
but
into
that's
a
why it sits right
microphone,
there
but
where I used to
it's.
sit.
He usually looks over
And
this
so
way.
all of a sudden,